Okay, let's see how we can use a spreadsheet to make some nice graphs of our data. What I've got here is just 3 columns of data that I made up. X is just integers 1 to 20, and then Y and Z are just some faked data that we can plot. So let's plot column Y versus column X. Remember when we say A versus B for a plot or a graph, we mean that A goes on the y-axis and B goes on the x-axis. So what we do is just select the data that we want to plot, and then there's usually a button. I realize this one's just off screen, but it usually looks something like a little graph, and it's called the graphing wizard or plotting wizard. And when you press that, you're going to get this little window, and it'll walk you through all the steps you need to make a nice graph. Now for this graph, we're going to choose an XY scatter plot. That's almost always the better choice when you're plotting data, say, from an experiment. All right, now we just hit next, and this next is just confirming the data range that we chose, those columns. Hit next again, and we can choose to put a title on our graph. So let's go ahead and put a title on here, and let's go ahead and label the X and Y axis. You can do this later, but you might as well just get it done now. And because I don't have more than one graph on this, I'm just going to not display the legend, and I'll go ahead and choose to display x-axis grids as well. Okay, so just hit finish and we get a nice graph. And if I move off that graph, I can move it around on my spreadsheet page a little bit. And well, we can do things like go ahead and reselect the graph and then click on the symbols, and I can for example, go through a library of symbols and choose a different symbol or change the size of the symbols. So there's lots of customization with coloring and things you can do on any spreadsheet program. So so I just reduced the size of those a little bit. All right, now the next thing we want to do is insert a best fit line through this data. So that's a line that's mathematically determined to be as close as possible to every point in the graph, more or less. And so what you do is you select the points, and there's a menu item up top called Insert Trend Line. And we can click over to the type of trend line, and you can see that there are various types of trend lines that we can use for different kinds of data. But in this case, we're going to use a linear fit or a linear trend line. And we can give that a name to use later. We can actually force the intercepts to go through 0, but that's usually not something that's a great idea. We do want to show the equation and show something called the correlation coefficient. So we hit finish, and we get the equation of our best fit line. I'll just move that up there. And so if you think about the equation of a line, y equals mx plus b, well, here's your m, your slope of the line, and here's your b. It's a negative number in this case. Okay, and then r squared is called the square of the correlation coefficient. And the basic idea behind this, without getting into too much detail, is that the closer it is to 1, the better. Now mathematically, what the program is doing when it finds this best fit line is that it's taking all of these vertical distances from the point to the best fit line, and it's summing the squares of all those, and it's trying to find the least sum. And that's, in a nutshell, how it does it. Okay, so let's do a new plot, and this time let's plot z versus x. So we'll take our z data versus our x data. So we do the same thing. We'll go to the function, or sorry, the graphing wizard, choose a scatter plot. And on this page here, we want to make sure we get the right y values because we've selected 3 columns. So we want to change all these b's from the b column to c's. And that'll give us the z column versus the x column. And let's go ahead and put in a title and X and Y axis labels again. We'll go ahead and shut off the legends. This is not a confusing set of multiple graphs, so we don't need that. And we'll choose the X-axis grid as well. Now, on this particular one, look at all this white space over here. I don't really like a graph like that doesn't make use of the whole thing. So what you can do is double click on the axis, and I can just change the limits of that axis from 25 to 20, the upper limit. And so it just rescaled it, and it makes use of the whole graph, and that's a nicer way to look. So let's go ahead and select these points and go back up to insert a trend line. We'll insert a linear trend line. We'll name it trend line 2. I don't really have to name it, but might be useful later. We'll show the equation, show the correlation coefficient, hit OK, and we'll have our nice new trend line. And let's move that equation down so we can see it. And again, we have our slope, our y-intercept, and our correlation coefficient. And again, the closer that is to 1, the better that data is represented by a line, by a straight line. All right, now if you want to take these graphs and use them, say for example just on this page, you can slide them around a little bit. You can play with printable area, things like that. If you're, say in this program, this is the Libre Office suite, I could take these and plug it into the word processor program, and so lots of different options there.